So good afternoon or good morning or good evening wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders Podcast would like to welcome the dynamic and charismatic television broadcaster, businesswoman, entrepreneur, and television personality, Katie Mohammed. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you, Karen.
So I would really like to congratulate you on all your achievements and success through a dynamic career and now the founder and creator of the W Suite. Can you please share with us a little more about your journey?
Oh, wow. I've been in the industry for close to 25 years. I first started off as a fashion designer and later decided that, I'd rather be wearing the clothes than making the clothes. So hence I got into sales and marketing. And, one of my first jobs was actually at a radio station. And that's where the love for media started, and actually a community radio station. So I started, in media and continued the journey through working for one of the biggest broadcasters in the country, which is the South African Broadcasting Corporation. And I've spent over 16 years there, from doing various positions from radio to television. And then in 2010, after a successful World Cup, which we delivered as a broadcaster, I decided to become an entrepreneur and work in the media and marketing space. So 10 years into being what I call a creative entrepreneur, as I find solutions as I go along with whatever projects come my way.
Amazing. So having worked both in the corporate sector of business and transitioning into your entrepreneurial journey, was this a natural transition for you, and how do you feel that having worked in a corporate or in the corporate world of broadcasting, has this helped you when you decided you wanted to become your own boss?
I believe I was a natural entrepreneur. I think I remember selling sweets and stuff in primary school to my fellow friends. So I definitely, entrepreneurship was always in my blood. I've always wanted to make extra cash because my parents couldn't afford, extra things. So in order for me to get what I needed, I found ways of making cash, throughout the journeys. So for me, being in corporate and then having the transition into an entrepreneurship was extremely important. And I always think that most entrepreneurs would benefit from being in corporate, because you understand a lot of the disciplines, you understand, what strategy is about, and just being in a corporate allows you access to, lots of people that you might not necessarily get to meet, because they would know you as, Katie Mohammed from the SABC. So it does become quite a gravitas relationship. So the transition from being from corporate to being an entrepreneur was very seamless then.
Yes.
So I always say that it's very important for any entrepreneur to have some kind of unless you're a trust fund, some kind of experience in corporate, because it's extremely important for the grounding, for the strategy, understanding of strategies, understanding of business plans, all those little nuances that we also get very frustrated about during our corporate, when we have bosses, and bosses need reporting, and bosses need timesheets and all of that. You only understand the importance of that when you're an entrepreneur. And for me, I was actually very grateful that I was one of those ones that were just always resistant. Is, don't you trust me? I know what I'm doing. And then realize that when you're a leader and you have people working for you, how important it is that you have all these disciplines in place. So there was a lot of value in the transition.
Amazing. So leading on to the subject of leadership or non-leadership in our current global narrative, what would you say from your own insight and experience needs to change, and what do you feel you personally do better, or should I say you feel is unique to your leadership style?
The demand of true leadership in this world has never been more greater and more tangible. It's actually quite scary that we are, most of the countries, I mean, nearly all have these sustainable development goals that we talk about, and we've not, met our equality quotas.
No.
So, this persistence of inequality between men and women remains such a key point of discussion globally. Women are, often talked about. We talk about women empowerment, but what does empowerment look like in our lives, in our careers? Because I always use South Africa as a platform where I say that, for us as brown women as well, we've come through an apartheid era. So we've had a lot of catching up that we had to do. So as women, we've had to, we've have even more challenges that we face. So I always believe to achieve our full potential as a nation and globally, in order for us to promote this balance of power in leadership, we need to be more we need to have more strategic interventions that that will include women more deliberately, more purposefully, and more strategically.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest, women are relentless. We're relentless when it comes to improving our social, economic, and political participation, and also just to ensure equal rights and opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Katie, what is a female entrepreneur you feel are some of the biggest challenges women face today, as there are many incredible women with amazing ideas? The biggest challenge that women have is a lack of confidence, especially in male-dominated industries. How and what are you as a woman doing to help other women specifically to change the current narrative?
Well, taking the lead, and I always say that as the elders, as we called in the entrepreneurship space and the corporate, we need to take the lead. So taking the lead and making this shift starts with reimagining this vocabulary of power, leadership, and opportunity. So it's quite an intense handing down that we do, as women in our, as we get older. So for me, a vision for me is how do I make more room for women at the table? How do we accelerate more women leaders in positions of power and influence? And most importantly, as a leader, is how do we co-create a new culture of power and influence that is also very inclusive and progressive? Because I think for me, transformation is really about how do we become inclusive and progressive? Because I believe if we have a strong female economy, we have a great nation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So you recently set up an event in South Africa, which I know you're planning to expand on a global scale at some point, called the W Suite. Can you firstly share with all of us about this concept, and what was the motivation for starting this amazing concept?
Malala Yousafzai says in her quotes, one of her quotes says, we can't all succeed if half of us are left behind.
Yeah.
And for me, that really resonates with me. And a couple of months ago, I went to the South African Presidential Investment Summit. So at that time, we had a new president and an acting president. And of course, the president had to bring a whole lot of people in a room together to talk about how do they all invest in the future of our country, especially corporates and government all in a room together. So there was a room of about 800 people, and I was again privileged to have a seat at the table. There were probably about 800 people, of which I think 600 were men, and probably 400 were over the age of maybe 55, 60. The 200 women, I probably knew every one of them. They were all most of them were over the age of 55. And for me, that I looked around and I'm like, how do I make any effort to accelerate change, to know that how can we give back to the young leaders of this country who could be the next CMOs, the CEOs, the chair people, because they're all out there, but because they don't have the relevant profiles, they might not necessarily be taken, seriously to these positions. And I made a concerted effort to actually decide is how do I, what is the effort that I need to create to make this change? And I met with a couple of women, like-minded women, and thought, you know what, do we become another women empowerment initiative? Do we become, there's so many out there globally. And I thought, well, why not another women empowerment? There's, probably 3.5 billion of us around globally. Why not another one? And how could we make this different? So the W Suite was conceived on the back of leadership, which is the C-suite, and W meaning women, and C-suite, and also W meaning we, because we all know that we cannot do this on our own. We equally need to drive global agendas with the men at the table. So W is, women as well as we. So hence the W Suite movement. It's actually a movement that we created. And we called it Let's Lead Like Women. Like we often say, how do you go fight like a girl? And we turned it into a positive to say, let's lead like women. Because let's be honest, we are nurturers, we carers, we amazing leaders. So basically I had a launch, a media launch in March this year on International Women's Month. And really I was overwhelmed by the support that I got. We trended at number 2. People all wanted to know what was Lead Like Women. And then I realized that it is important. What I'm trying to drive was a very important element in a global agenda, is that women need to have conversations about where do they go next? How do we collaborate with each other? How do we have these conversations with each other? How do we connect with each other? And through my networks, I must say, it was an extremely successful launch, and then built up to the summit, which is, of course, was held on South Africa's National Women's Month, which is the 7th of August. And again, had the most amazing, around 300 women and men that came together, that contributed and really wanted to have a conversation about how do we spark conversation and advocacy and action towards shifting this balance of power. And that was amazing. And I was extremely humbled. And also I realized that, we need to own it. We need to own where we want to go. We need to own how do we drive this acceleration of our agendas, and how do we not just wait around to have either our male counterparts or other people telling us where to go next. We need to know where we want to go and tell people where we want to go.
Absolutely. So in the current economic climate in South Africa, what would you say is the biggest challenge right now for those who are listening? And do you feel that these are relatable global challenges or specifically unique to South Africa?
Wow, I think it's it's a loaded question, that one. I think we have a global challenge. Driving an economic agenda is globally. Globally, we have a huge challenge, especially with women, from a leadership perspective. South Africa, most specifically, we're currently in an environment where we a little bit unsettled. We had an election that was much needed this year. So before the elections, nothing was happening. Not a lot of corporates, not a lot of government entities. Well, not a lot of people in general were making a lot of commitments. So we kind of lost half of this year because people wanted to know what the elections hold. And I think that's basically globally where people will want to know what happens with an election in a country before things happen. So that kind of took us, 5 to 6 months of the year, which was in June. And then, July, we have a new president. We had the State of the Nation address where the president talked about how do we bring back the spirit of Ubuntu. And Ubuntu means how do we bring back the spirit of goodwill and, just being kind to each other. So we kind of, trying to catch up in the second half of the year at the moment. So we are very challenged. As entrepreneurs, we're extremely challenged. The budgets have been cut, both in government and corporate. A lot of clients want a lot more for what they pay, a lot less. I mean, you know this, I don't have to tell you. So we have to find creative ways of actually, making money. And I think a lot of people are passionate about what they do, and they forget that, money is the currency that we need to drive. So that's one of the biggest challenges now. A lot of people are creative, they're passionate about their jobs, they're passionate about what they do, but we forget that, all of it, boils down to the finances. Some people just can't afford certain things. And some clients just don't have the budgets for certain things. So it also becomes a very demotivating space to be in. Because of this currency that we talk about, that's driving the passion at the moment. So I think very, very demotivated, very unsure about certain things. But I always say, as women and as South Africans, we are resilient, and we thrive under pressure. And if we have a vision focused of where we need to be, I think that's the most important thing. So as an entrepreneur, I always say, that's why I call myself a creative entrepreneur. And it doesn't mean that I'm a graphic artist. I call myself a creative entrepreneur purely because you find opportunities and solutions wherever you need to. And that's the space that I'm at now.
Amazing. So, there are many individuals and groups trying to help disadvantaged girls, but I believe your focus is to help female entrepreneurs that have startups that really need to connect with potential investors or higher level entrepreneurs who could ultimately work with or partner or collaborate with. Can you share with us on how you are planning on doing this, and what is your long-term vision for the W Suite?
So that's a very important question. There's a lot of empowerment projects that are always, concentrating as we call it, outreach projects. And I just felt that, we tend to sometimes forget the women in corporate, the entrepreneurs, the startups, the leaders that actually do need help. They do need the doors to be open. They all have their qualifications. They all have jobs. They have startups. But not everyone, like we talked about confidence early, not everyone has the confidence to be able to say, to DM someone or send an email to someone that's relevant. And let's be honest, in this industry, in this world as we live in, it's really all about, about who you know. So networking is extremely important. And for me, that was the difference that I had created. The initiative is more about unapologetic. How do we create a strong female economy? And how do we bring more women at the seat of the table? And hence, I said, if the women in the C-suite and women entrepreneurs and women in startups in the urban areas have the opportunities and have their doors open, it doesn't stop them from going to their communities and making sure that they give back as well. So I am very clear in my vision to focus on women that are startups, entrepreneurs, women in leaders, to say, listen, here is a networking platform. So yes, everybody talks about, is it, usually they talk about conferences and summits and initiatives being a talk shop. And I said, but it's okay to have a talk shop, because when you have a talk shop, you literally connecting, you understanding each other. I mean, for me, being in this industry as long as I have, the most important things I've always taken away is our networks. And, there's a thing that says your networks equals your net worth. And it's extremely true. Because, but for me is how do I leverage off this, and how do I get like-minded women that need a lot of these things to actually, to benefit from it.
Yes.
So for me, it's very important that I help women to collectively come together and collaborate, and actually find opportunities to connect with each other. So it's a very, very important a vision of mine. And I also believe in having tangible outcomes. And
yes, of course.
For me, it's
it's critical results, really, right?
It's very critical results. And really, it's just that you, when you network with influential people, you also learn how to build profitable networks, because having these great networks mean nothing if you don't know how to build profitable networks. And for me, that is how we, come together as W Suite to make sure that, the community at large is engaged and energized by the network that they are surrounded. Of course, just I always believe in impact-driven projects that I work on, and for me, it's really creating an enabling environment for people, and also most importantly, deepen transformation and inclusivity, because that's the most important thing at the moment. One of the major outcomes that came out of the summit was mentorships. A lot of women want to mentor, a lot of mentees want the access, but it doesn't. They don't find each other.
No.
And,
but don't you also find that with like corporate, and I'm just explaining from my perspective as well, is that if I find that South African corporates make themselves completely impossible to even get to, like, the CEOs of companies or whatever. So unless you know someone who knows someone, whereas internationally now the trend is a lot of entrepreneurs are actually utilizing platforms like social media and making themselves more accessible. So is that changing in South Africa, or is it still kind of the same?
I think I think for me, I have access to a lot of people, and I think a lot of people that don't have access find it difficult. And I always say is that we have to also understand that to have access to these people, you really need to have a great business friend, a great opportunity, because otherwise they're just going to be meeting 20 people a day that's actually wasting their time.
No, for sure. I mean, you have to sift.
Yeah, you have to. So you need to have a shit hot, if I can use that word, a shit hot proposal, business plan, idea, in order for you to be able to say, hey, look at me, I need you to see me. But also, just keep banging at doors, keep being friends with their PAs, and I mean, South Africa at the moment, it's a small community. Everybody knows each other. I mean, we have access to most people from a social media perspective. Like I said, there's not anybody that you can't say you don't know, because we just a lot of about 50 million people, of which probably only about 15 or 10 million people, have access to a lot of things here. So for me, I would say it's twofold. It is difficult to get to certain people, sometimes even myself. But like I said, I'm resilient and I'm persistent, and I think
you're resourceful.
And I'm very resourceful. So yes, I do. I will phone a friend who knows a friend who knows a friend and say, hey,
that's what you have to do.
I need to see someone. And I think that is very important, because yes, if you don't get a thing, this morning as well, I made a call to someone from a big corporate in South Africa that's a global brand, and my first call to my call to him was, hi, so and so, this is Katie Mohammed. I'm not sure if you remember me, but I met you at, the Marketing Achievers Awards, and he immediately said, yes, hi, So you got to make yourself know when you see people. So when you do meet them, you got to refer to when you met them as well sometimes. So it's very important to actually, when people say, oh, I'm so reserved, I'm so shy. And I'm thinking to myself, in this day and age, none of us have the luxury of being reserved or shy. And, I'm not judging anybody, but I mean, if you want to be an entrepreneur, even if you want to be known in your company as well, you can't afford to be reserved or shy. So that's why there's a lot of, coaching and a lot of inspirational and motivation that we need to hold on to. So for me, I think that it is changing, but it's really upon the individual to keep on going. And like I believe, what is owed to you will come to you. So sometimes it might not be the right time, but eventually, time will be relevant.
Absolutely. So what would you say some of your biggest lessons and learnings have been within your career, and can you give us some examples as well as some of your career highlights?
Okay, so my challenges that I have faced over my career, I think when I started, it was really a challenge because marketing was predominantly predominantly a white industry. So that started a huge challenge, but it never stopped me. I really persevered. And as the landscape slowly changed in the marketing and advertising industry, I kind of felt that I grew with the transformation, which was very important. So as South Africa transformed in the 90s, so did my opportunities, because then you were at the right place at the right time. Brown people at that time, we were getting the right opportunities, the right people. So it was really, for me, my challenges, I must say, as a woman, has been that, we never played golf. We never hung out with the boys club. So the opportunities were always signed around there. Even now as an entrepreneur, I still see it happening. And I think those were the big challenges, is like we just never as women could come together, back in the days to create what the men did as this boys club that they all so proudly talk about. Various challenges along the way. But I think it was corporate challenges. You always have the benefit of being supported by your senior management, your senior leaders. But I always say, I think my character and my personality stood out from a lot. So I've always been blessed, and I must say lucky enough to have gotten the right positions at the right time. So I think I had more challenges in my entrepreneurship space than I did in corporate. And my successes, one of the most, I've always in my lifetime thought I'd be a journalist and, a newsreader, because at that time in South Africa it was like, a place to be. And I tell people this funny story that the boys in my neighborhood, I used to bribe them with sweets to let them listen to me reading the newspaper. How funny was that? Pretty funny. And for me, one of my, my biggest successes was hosting and producing a talk show. And for me, that was like one of my biggest achievements, because as you would know me, that I love to talk, but having a platform, a national platform where people listen to your own experiences on a talk show, and sharing a platform with some of my mentors was like the most amazing thing. People like Basisana Kumalo, who was the former Miss South Africa, Carol Bauer, also from broadcasting, and now a successful businesswoman. To share a platform with them was extremely humbling for me. Learning. I understood a lot of behind the camera, because of production, but having to learn the nuances of being in front of the camera. And I remember somebody once said to me is that you need to learn to love the camera.
Yes.
And then I said, but I think the camera loves me. And I think for me that was just, I just started thriving, and one of my biggest successes was just hosting and producing a talk show, talking about amazing things, personal experiences, inspirational, motivational stuff.
Yeah.
And also, my love of food. So those were lucky successes. I have just love of cooking and hosting people. That's my, special love. I always say cook what you love and love what you cook.
Yeah.
And just having my own cooking show where I used to have, some of my guests that were my friends, and it was called Food with Friends as well, funny enough. And that was very special to me. So those were kind of my highlights.
Okay.
And then, going into the entrepreneurship space, which was something that took me totally by surprise because I wasn't prepared for where my journey was going. I had preordained idea of, where I wanted to be.
I think we all do, right?
Yeah, and I think the universe has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And I must say my entrepreneurship journey has been challenging, but the lessons have been amazing. And I've always say, I always hold on to the fact is that I collect the good people along the way.
Yeah,
And through these good people, your networks, your social networks and your business networks open. And I think for me, that is, I don't have much to complain about because I've kind of handled it as I went along, as I've been along the way. I must say, amazing. Yeah.
So you started Brand Fusion many years ago. How do you feel social media has impacted your business? And how easy has it been for you to adapt? And can you share with us as to how this has helped you, but also challenged you to think differently and adapt according to what you do and what you do, and what do you feel you can do better?
So Brand Fusion, my business partner and I created about 10 years ago, and it was really about creating a very, a hub, a marketing communication hub, because, there's the big agencies out there and they all do through the line. And for me, it was, for me and Etienne, it was really about how do we create this collaborative intelligence within an agency and try to be very different because we come up with some ideas. So Brand Fusion also has had, its journeys of changing from strategically from where it was to where the money was coming. And I think that was very important as well, because you kind of also go where the money is when you first start off a business as well. So from doing an event production, I've never ever done an event in my life, and all of a sudden I was awarded one of the productions because I had the most amazing people that I went with for the pitch, and also had to just learn all of these amazing things about event production. So we kind of, from a Brand Fusion perspective, we've also had our own journey along the way as we grew. Nearly 10 years later, I must say that we've now become kind of like we are through the line agency now. So we would do just about anything and find people that would do things together with us. Social media from a company perspective, I would say that, because I am, as the CEO of the company, I've had created a brand before I started the company, which also helped us along the way from a company perspective. And I always say that, our brand is our currency as well. So you have to, create who you are. So when you own your own business, it becomes such a natural, because like we always say, people buy from people. Brand Fusion could be a company today, but it could be another company tomorrow, but I could be the CEO there of that company. So people buy from people. So I think that's what happened with Brand Fusion, is because we created a great hub networks and suppliers that we've worked with that had names behind them, so people would know already what they've delivered on before. It wasn't like, so give us your testimonials, what have you done? It was people just knew them. So that for me was so important on the journey of brand fusion. And what worked for me as well is that, people knew me. So brand fusion became a name because of me. So that was also kind of important for our growth as a company. Social media is, I would say, as we go along our journey, has become so extremely important. I think it's more important than any other medium at the moment. You immediately follow someone and they follow you back, and you're like, oh wow, I have access to them. I can DM them, or I can comment something that's relevant. So social media by far has been the most important thing. I always say to entrepreneurs and other young leaders that it's also very important to find out what you want to post, because I think a lot of us kind of lost our way with things like Instagram and Twitter, where we were, we just thought, it's a democracy, we can just say what we want. But these things follow us, wherever we go. So I think it's important for us to ensure that when you become a brand, even in a corporate, so wherever you are, be careful what you post, and I think find out what your true worth is, what your value, what you stand for, before you create this content that you want everyone to see. So for me, social media is by far one of the most important and extremely relevant tool for our current trading at the moment.
Perfect. So you have always had a passion for CSI or philanthropy. Can you share with us some of the projects you've been involved with, or what you are currently involved with? So whether it's past or current.
Okay, so I think I've always been a social entrepreneur at heart. From the time I was young, living in a little village, my dad enforced that we made sure that we did something special for the kids in the township, and it was like a regular thing. So I've always, for me, doing work within the communities were also like my giving back. And I think via working in corporate as well, it's easy because it's something that they had to drive. But as an entrepreneur, I worked on some of the most amazing projects, and one that I could that stand out is really, and my company as Brand Fusion actually has the fact that we were part of the 67 blankets for Mandela project. With Carolyn Stain at that time, and I must say the year that we took that project, managed the project, we broke the world record for the largest blankets. We did it. It was amazing. It was under Madiba's statue under the Union buildings. It was like unheard of. So that, and that was really also giving back to the communities where we got people to knit and crochet blankets to give back to the communities. I'd worked on that. I was part of working with the corporate client, being part of the CEO sleep out, where we managed to get about 2,000 CEOs on a bridge. I think this is done globally, but one of my clients I took through to become part of this project as well. That was amazing. A lot of the money was also contributed to education. That was so that was so those were the projects I recently I've done stuff like a lot of awareness projects, which you've probably seen on my social media at the moment, just because we've come from a space of gender-based violence, and I created a beautiful awareness project which is called the Red Lipstick campaign, where I got celebrities and personalities, male celebrities and personalities wearing the red lipstick to talk about, how they support the women, and how they are brothers and fathers and grandfathers, and they are responsible for ensuring that there is a solution for this gender-based violence that we have. So I work on just these are just to name a few awareness and social media projects that I'm very passionate about.
Yes. No, it's amazing. So sitting here today, what would you say in terms of a legacy would you like to leave, and what is your ultimate vision?
My ultimate vision is to just have, a kinder society.
Yes.
A kind society is how do we commit to just being there for each other, and how do we commit to caring for each other in every way. And I think the most important thing at the moment in the world is that we need more kindness.
Absolutely.
And for me is I always say that as women, that is why we make such amazing leaders, because we naturally care, and we always in solidarity, with challenges, with opportunities. So for me, it's I wish that we just had a more kinder society. And at the moment, I always I'm on this this energy space that I speak to myself every day about, is that how do we lead with authenticity, with purpose, and with intent. So if we get up every single day and say, what is how can I be authentic today? What is my purpose today? And how do I do all of this with a great intention? So for me, that is, a true reward, because we can actually measure that. We can actually measure that reward. So I always say that, I surround myself with, and for me, just talking about the legacy thing is really, for me, a legacy is I always speak about how do I surround myself with the people that inspire me. And I surround myself with 5 people, and one is the inspired, people that inspire you, because these are good people. They challenge you, and they encourage you to become more, to do more, because you end up leading a high quality of life when you become inspired by other people. And the other one I say is the motivated. These people, you got to choose them wisely, people that motivate you, because
absolutely,
these motivated people, you got to choose them, those that are energized, and that have an infectious zest for life, and that are focused and dream big. That becomes like a huge factor in your life. And then the open-minded is, for me, if we surround ourselves with people that teach you, like I said, how to lead with authenticity, intent, and purpose. And of course, I always believe this. I actually have this as a tattoo. It's the passionate, because these people have energies that are so contagious, that touch your heart, that nourish your soul, and that also that we talk about this magic, that they put the magic and passion into your madness. And lastly, I always say is, just be grateful, because if you hang around with people that are grateful, these ones, they're always conscious. They always show gratitude, whether it's something that's negative or something that's positive. So for me, that's my legacy. If I know that I've hung around these 5 people that have made my life authentic and purposeful, I know that I've done well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the final question is, what would be your 3 key pieces of advice for other entrepreneurs?
Well, it depends on what. For me, it's as entrepreneurs, I always say that there's this proverb that says, if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go with others. And it's about the power of the pack. So one of the most important things is collaborations.
Yes, absolutely.
Because if you observe how both men and women have successful collaboration, and it's also about relationships and integrity. And for me, that's what one of them is called, the power of the pack. The most important thing. The other one that I always talk about is that, you collect the good people wherever you are, socially, from a business perspective, you just collect the good people. The toxic ones, the ones that don't belong in your energy space, they will find their way out. But the moment you correct the good people, you move forward together, and that for me is extremely important. So and lastly, I would say is that how do we become, as entrepreneurs, how do we become inclusive, and how do we become progressive in our thinking? How do we become innovators and disruptive? Because through all of this, we have meaningful participation in the strong economy that we often talk about.
Yeah.
So for me, it's those three, I think, stand out the most.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your insight and your journey and your expertise, and hopefully we can have you back in the future.
Definitely. And I always want to say is that, I talk about, we all talk about, this collaborative resilience for a strong economy. And I always say that, and I'd like to leave you with this, is that, people say that money doesn't buy happiness. And I, to some extent, I disagree, because my papa, when he was alive, in his divine wisdom, taught me that money does buy happiness, incandescent, insurmountable happiness, because when you have it, and when you have access to it, and you get to share it with others, that for me is the single most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much, and hopefully we'll see you in the future.
Thanks, Karen. Thank you so much.
Bye.